But then the effect, as I just blend this into a little chip shot, just feels like I'm so much more over the golf ball. And the compression and low point and everything just goes so much further forward towards the target. So one of the more common flaws that we see in the golf swing is a loss of posture or standing up in the backswing. But this specific example here was quite interesting because this gentleman, through his own self-diagnosis, looked at where his handle was at the end of his swing and said, I need more depth, right? Now, depth, right, in its most simplistic fashion, is how deep the handle gets behind you relative to the golf ball. So let's say the line drawn vertically down from this gentleman over here on the right-hand side golf grip, you can see that kind of falls just outside the ankle on his back foot there. Now, our friend over here on the left, as we do the same sort of line, we can see that it falls well behind him. Now, originally, he was maybe up here somewhere. Right? So he's gone, I need to get this golf club deeper. Let's get it all the way behind him. But what he's done, he's actually stood up to get in that position, right? Absolutely. So I want you to kind of talk me through this right here and some adjustments that you made and some conversations that you had with this guy.
Yeah, sure. So this gentleman felt like he needed to swing the club more rounded, add more depth, as you mentioned there, bring the hands more behind him in an effort to try and draw the golf ball. Unfortunately, he actually saw the ball go way more to the right than he ever believed. Because in an effort to move the club more around him, a few things started to happen. He started to roll his arms to the right because he thought he was going to get the club head behind him sooner, which would help him return it in that manner.
So just do that once more. So rolling the arms as you go slowly, we can see that this lead arm generally tends to pick up. We can see the back of this left hand tends to face more up towards the sky. The club face tends to pancake open into this position. Now that might be okay for certain lob or flop shots or bunker shots around the green, but certainly not when you're trying to create compression, right?
Absolutely.
It really messes up with the sequence, and trying to control this club face throughout the motion then is very difficult. So then from there, what was he doing?
From there, he continued on exactly the same motion. So we saw the arms get even flatter more across his chest. We saw the left shoulder start to pick up and pull away from the golf ball.
Oh yeah, look at the angle of your shoulders there, right? And if you close your eyes, tell me where the pressure in your feet is.
It's definitely way on my right foot and way into my right heel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so within reason, what we see with the professional golfer and anyone who's very proficient at striking the golf ball would be that they would keep somewhat of a centered head, right? It's not staying dead still. It can swivel, it can rotate a little bit, it can shift a little bit back and forth, but it's certainly not moving mountains by lifting up.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, as soon as we do that and we're out of posture, now we have to make a plethora sort of compensations down to the ball to try and match it up, right? And what was this guy doing?
Absolutely. So he would get to the top in this flat position, and occasionally, because he was too far away from it, he'd occasionally stay back on that right side, keep everything really high, and his low point would be way behind the ball. And sometimes when it come in to approach the ball, he'd almost top it because the club was rising as it found impact. The second thing he started to do, once he found out that wasn't the thing, he started to continue, same stuff. And then even though he thought it was coming from the inside, he actually started to peel that left shoulder back down to the ground, which then made him come over the top and then actually pull the ball miles left as well.
Yeah, so this gentleman is really struggling with low point control, which in its most simplistic form is, for the amateur golfer, kind of first point of contact with the ground within reason. Okay, essentially the golf club descends, has a bottom and then rises again. But what we see with the pro is that low point would be about 4 inches in front. But if we were kind of making it simple so it's digestible for every player, essentially they hit the ground, or the first point of contact is just after the golf ball.
Absolutely.
So when a player is struggling and they're hitting behind, they're hitting the top of the ball, what's from that understanding that you gave this gentleman, that he was kind of trying to get that depth but through an inefficient movement because of self-diagnosis, what did you get him working on from there?
Perfect. So the first thing I explained is actually we need to put him in a position that makes him more naturally hit down on the ball rather than trying to force it in the end.
Love that.
So one of the things we really spoke about is how the lead shoulder works. That was just a point that I isolated, and I personally like to see into the takeaway as he rotates back that the lead shoulder starts working down and into the centre of the sternum, opposed to pulling up and to the right.
Yep.
And the second he did that and he started to move his left shoulder down, the club started to move more vertically. The club face started to stay a little bit more hooded. And then now that gave him the sensation that he was naturally going to allow the club to fall into it. To pick up the depth side, we just made sure that rather than just tilt and pick the club up, he added some rotation with it. So once he had got to the first stage of just pulling the left shoulder down as he rotates, just continue to rotate while his left shoulder stays under him.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Depth is created through the movement and the rotation of the body in the backswing. So for example, if I just set up to this golf ball and I recreate what Jay just presented so well there, and I get into this position. We see a lot of players get there, like, okay, I'm tilting perfectly, my head stayed centered, club face is matching up, feel like I'm nice and rotated. But then we see far too many players then do this.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, the rotation of the body is incredibly important, because if I take that exact same position, right, and then if I just lift my arms, continuing to lift my arms, I really can't get any depth whatsoever. But if I was to actually just from that position turn my body, so my hips and my chest back, try and get this approximately 90-degree shoulder turn, well, now all of a sudden the end of the golf club starts to move behind us. Now, not only does that assist in getting this golf club delivering from more of that in to out part that a lot of recreational golfers are trying to achieve, but also it is a great power move as well. Because if the golf club just tends to move up and down on this singular plane, well, the golf swing is a circular event as it rotates around our body. And if we're just moving this golf club up and down, well, essentially, that's kind of trying to hit like a tee-ball or a baseball like this. There's no power out towards a forward target. So by getting this gentleman, from what you were saying, getting the feeling that lead shoulder goes down first,
Yep.
did you get him stopping in this frame and then just turning to the top?
Absolutely. I did a couple of checkpoint drills with him again, so we set up a station that he could work with as well.
So we've got a big rod here, right? What I want you to do is set this up for me, and I'm going to address the ball and kind of give me some awareness of what you did with this guy.
Now, what I'd like you to do now is make a backswing, okay? And I want your lead shoulder to move down and below you, but it mustn't pass the stick.
Okay, so this gentleman, first of all, was going more like this, right?
100%, yeah.
Okay.
Which
And
you can see how that affected the arms there as well.
Straight away. And as I go back and I feel like my lead shoulder's kind of going down,
That's it.
I almost can see more of the left-hand side of the plate than the right-hand side as well.
Yep.
Because my head is staying a lot more centered, allowing it to swivel. It's not going to stay dead still because then I can't get rotated. But lead shoulder's going down. Yep.
That's it. And then from there, I'd ask him to stay where he was with the lead shoulder, but continue to rotate so the left shoulder couldn't pull across
Oh, yeah.
from there. And that's when he got into a flat position.
And this is the thing, we can see that the golf club has now moved behind me, so it's gotten the depth. I feel a little bit of a crunch in the lead side, right? And that's called side bend or tilting. Briefly explain to us the importance of tilting in the golf swing, because the golf ball is not played out in front of us, right? It's down on the ground. So for us to maintain a centered head within reason, we need an element of this side bend, don't we?
Absolutely. We call it left bending. So it is a simple motion in the golf swing of if I stood straight up, stood bolt upright, and then I started to bend to the left,
Yep.
and then I rotated my spine to the right, you know, so I'm in a pretty good position, and you can see how I'm tilted over the ball, but I didn't start in that position. And it's actually the left bending that gives you the ability to tilt down to the ball. So again, if I go to the top and I just tilt my body to the left, that's what gives me the inclination down to the ball. A lot of guys think they've got to stay in forward bend, which is where if I want to stay over the golf ball the longest, I need to keep my chest down. Now, the problem with keeping the chest down
We see that.
is I lose height and I travel to the right.
Yeah, and I just did a bunch of videos with Steve over at a nearby golf course, and we're talking about speed generation and power. And the common misconception in the golf swing that the head needs to stay dead still, right? So it's not rotating or swiveling. And even what you just did then is when we stay in front bend, what happens is our head actually moves down and away relative to what we generally see with the professional golfer. It will actually sometimes even extend up a little bit. And that is because the side bend and the extension of the chest actually gets their body raising up, which then allows them to create more speed as they move down into the golf ball. So with what you've just detailed there is the importance of not only within reason getting this lead shoulder working down to give us a side bend to try and get accuracy, it also has a huge follow-on effect of generating speed.
Absolutely.
So now from there, when you set up to that golf ball, the feeling you gave him, you did a couple of drills with that stick, getting the understanding, the feel that, okay, we're trying to get the lead shoulder working down. Now, did you do any of your freezer drills? Did you stop start? What did it look like?
Yeah, I actually gave him a slightly different drill when he was over the ball if he got a bit lost, because when he's out on the golf course, he has not got a stick there. So what can he do on the golf course to help himself? The most simple drill of putting the club across his shoulders and making sure he can angle that angle that club down towards the ball. Now, the checkpoint here again is making sure that when he angled it down, it wasn't behind the ball. He had to feel like it was really pointing at the ball, which he might have even felt a little bit more pressure building up into his left leg, which is absolutely fine. And then he can tilt down to the ball there, have a couple of swings, really feel the stretch in his spine, feel what that feels like, and then he can move on to his golf swing. Can he recreate them same stretches? And then walk in and hit some shots.
Right, let me jump in. I'm going to have a feel of that. So for myself, even as a player when I was younger, I tended to be in the old keep the trail knee, flex, shift off it, hang back, throw the wrists sort of motion. So for me, this is definitely a feeling that I've developed over a few years of this left side bend early on, feeling like I'm very much in a more tilted fashion, but you can see I'm getting depth there still. A lot of players would look at that and they go, oh, it's reverse pivoting, it feels different. I think I should be all the way loading up 100% of my weight on my back foot. But the golf swing is a dynamic athletic motion, right? And we shift our pressure early to our trail foot and then we recenter before we move towards the target in its entirety, and that's how you generate speed and power in the golf swing. So when I'm standing up here, just doing these little half swings, feeling like the lead shoulder's moving down, and yes, that's going to feel like an exaggeration for someone that is so used to doing this, but then the effect, as I just blend this into a little chip shot, just feels like I'm so much more over the golf ball, and the compression and low point and everything just goes so much further forward towards the target. Mate, excellent stuff.
Good job.